The afternoon sun cast golden light through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Kang estate as Halley Williams polished the ornate silverware with practiced precision. Each piece gleamed under her careful attention, and she felt that quiet pride that came from transforming something tarnished into something beautiful. This was her gift, making invisible work visible through excellence. The sprawling Los Angeles mansion had become her sanctuary over the past 6 months, a place where her meticulous standards were not just appreciated, but expected. The peace shattered with the screech of tires on the circular driveway. Halley's head snapped up as 3 squad cars tore through the gates, sirens wailing, gravel spraying. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Officers emerged with hands on weapons, faces set in aggressive determination. Leading the charge were 2 men whose body language screamed authority abused, Officers James Baldwin and Michael Anthony. Before Halley could process what was happening, the front door opened with calm deliberation. Lee Kang stepped onto the portico in a striking red silk shirt and dark slacks, looking like a man interrupted during leisure rather than one facing armed police. His expression remained utterly composed, almost bored, as if this was merely an inconvenience rather than a threat. "Lee Kang," Baldwin's voice carried across the manicured lawn. "Come out with your hands where we can see them. You're under arrest for drug trafficking, racketeering, and organized crime." Halley's feet carried her outside before her mind could intervene. She found herself on the front steps, positioned between her employer and the advancing officers. "Do you have a warrant?" Her voice rang out clear and steady despite her pounding heart. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I have missed you all, missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support on YouTube now more than ever. Thank you specially for sticking around to this very moment." If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, back to the story. Baldwin's eyes cut to her with pure venom. "This doesn't concern you. Step aside." "This is private property." Halley stood her ground, channeling every ounce of her grandmother's fierce dignity. "You can't just storm onto someone's land making accusations. Show me your warrant." "Lady, you need to move before you get arrested for obstruction." Anthony's hand moved towards his handcuffs. "I have a right to see proper legal documentation before you enter this property. My employer has rights too. Due process. Or did they stop teaching that at the academy?" Baldwin's face flushed crimson. "Stay out of this, or you're going down with him. You want to protect criminals? We'll treat you like one." Movement in her peripheral vision. Neighbors emerging from their own estates, phones raised, recording. The officers noticed too. Baldwin's jaw clenched as he realized his aggressive approach was being documented by witnesses who understood wealth and power, who had lawyers on speed dial. "We'll be back," Baldwin hissed, stabbing a finger toward Kang, "with everything we need, and next time your maid won't be able to save you." As the squad cars peeled away, Halley's knees threatened to buckle. She turned to find Lee Kang watching her with an expression she'd never seen before, something between surprise and a respect so profound that it made her breath catch. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes," Halley replied, meeting his gaze with newfound certainty. Inside the mansion's security room, Kang's head of security replayed the footage on multiple monitors. The confrontation played out from 6 different angles, the officer's aggression crystal clear, Halley's intervention undeniable. The man clicked through timestamps with professional efficiency, while Kang stood silent, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "She is either very brave or very foolish," the security chief muttered. "Or both," Kang replied softly. He found Halley in the kitchen, methodically finishing the silverware as if nothing had happened. Her hands moved with the same careful precision, but he noticed the slight tremor she was fighting to control. "You didn't have to do that," he said from the doorway. Halley set down the polishing cloth and met his gaze directly. "I did. They had no right to come here like that, treating you like some common criminal without even showing a warrant. That's not how the law is supposed to work." Her moral certainty struck him as both refreshing and dangerous. In his world, people understood nuance, calculated angles, weighed consequences. She simply saw right and wrong with a clarity that made her either incorruptible or vulnerable. "Those officers won't forget what you did today," Kang said carefully. "They'll see you as an obstacle. You should be careful, Halley, very careful." "I can take care of myself, Mr. Kang." The formal address felt wrong after what she'd done, but he didn't correct her. Instead, he nodded once and left her to her work, though his mind remained troubled by thoughts of her exposed position. That evening, Halley's ancient Honda sputtered into the parking lot of her Studio City apartment complex. The building was a far cry from the Kang estate, cracked stucco, struggling palm trees, the perpetual smell of someone's cooking mixing with exhaust fumes. But it was hers, paid for by her own work, and she'd never needed anyone's charity to maintain it. She noticed the unmarked sedan immediately. 6 years in Los Angeles had taught her to recognize plainclothes police vehicles. Baldwin and Anthony emerged as she approached her building, blocking her path with casual intimidation. "Ms. Williams," Baldwin's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Fancy running into you here." Halley's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice steady. "Officers, is there something I can help you with?" "Just wanted to have a friendly conversation." Anthony circled behind her, boxing her in. "About your employer, about your choices." "You want to protect criminals?" Baldwin stepped closer, invading her space. "Then we'll treat you like one. Immigration checks, tax audits, background investigations. We'll find something, Halley. Everyone has something." "I'm a U.S. citizen with a clean record," Halley said, hating how her voice wavered. "For now," Baldwin said, his breath smelling like coffee and malice. "But things can change. Evidence can surface. Witnesses can come forward. You understand what I'm saying?" "Stay away from Kang if you know what's good for you," Anthony added. "He's going down, and anyone standing next to him goes down too. Your choice. Walk away clean or get buried with him." They left her standing in the parking lot, knees weak, heart hammering. Halley made it to her apartment and locked the door with shaking hands. For the first time since moving to LA, she felt truly afraid. Not of violence or immediate danger, but of the grinding machinery of institutional power turning its attention towards crushing her. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Halley, it's Lee Kang." His voice carried concern that seemed genuine. "Are you all right? My people saw what happened in your parking lot." Your people. The reminder that she'd been watched, followed, monitored should have felt invasive. Instead, she felt a strange relief that someone had witnessed her vulnerability. "I'm fine," Halley said, forcing strength into her voice that she didn't feel. "I don't doubt that you can, but you shouldn't have to handle it alone." "I've been handling things alone my whole life, Mr. Kang." "Yes," he said quietly. "I suspect you have. But that was before today. Before you made yourself visible to dangerous men. Everything's different now." He was right, and they both knew it. Her courage had consequences, and she was just beginning to understand their weight. The call came at 7:30 the next morning, wrenching Halley from restless sleep. "Halley, it's Patricia." Her agency supervisor's voice carried that particular tone of corporate discomfort, sympathetic but final. "I'm afraid we need to reassign you from the Kang household." Halley sat up, instantly alert. "Reassign me? Why? Mr. Kang has never complained about my work." "It's not about your work," Patricia sighed. "The household has become too controversial. We've received pressure, official pressure. It's better for everyone if we move you to a different client." "Official pressure." The words tasted bitter. "You mean the police called you?" I can't discuss specifics, but yes. And Halley, I'm sorry, but several of your other clients have requested different staff. They're concerned about the association. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her. How many clients? All of them. The line went dead, and Halley stared at her phone in numb disbelief. Blacklisted. Baldwin had made calls, applied pressure, and now she was toxic. No clients meant no income. No income in Los Angeles meant a brutal, fast slide into homelessness. She pulled up her banking app with trembling fingers. Rent due in 2 weeks. Car payment in 10 days. The numbers blurred as panic clawed at her throat. 6 years of building a reputation, of being reliable and excellent and invisible, destroyed in 24 hours because she dared to stand up for what was right. Pride warred with desperation as she stared at her phone. Kang had said she shouldn't have to handle this alone. One call and maybe he could fix this. Maybe his lawyers could pressure the agency or his connections could... No. She'd never been someone who needed rescuing. Accepting help meant owing debts, and debts meant losing the independence she'd fought so hard to maintain. The knock at her door made her jump. Through the peephole, Lee Kang stood in her dingy hallway looking impossibly elegant in a charcoal suit. Not a messenger, not an employee, the man himself, in her world rather than summoning her to his. Halley opened the door, hyper-aware of her worn pajamas, her tiny studio apartment with its thrift store furniture and peeling linoleum. "Mr. Kang, how did you—" He stepped inside at her wordless gesture, his presence immediately making the small space feel smaller. "I heard what happened. With your agency, your clients. It's my fault, and I need to fix it." "You don't need to do anything." Her walls slammed up instantly. "I'll figure it out." "Halley." His voice was gentle but firm. "Baldwin will make sure you can't work anywhere in domestic services in this city. He's systematic when he wants to destroy someone." The truth of it made her throat tight. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Work for me directly." Kang's dark eyes held hers. "I need someone for a personal household manager. Someone to oversee the staff, manage estate operations, handle the daily running of the property. Triple your current salary, full benefits, and private quarters on the grounds if you want them." "I don't need charity." The words came out sharper than intended. "It's not charity." He moved closer, and she could smell his expensive cologne. "I need someone I can trust. Someone with integrity. That's extraordinarily rare in my world, Halley. What you did yesterday, standing up to those officers without calculating what it would cost you, that's not something money can buy." "It's legitimate work," he continued. "Managing staff, coordinating vendors, overseeing maintenance. Nothing illegal, nothing that would compromise your principles." Halley wanted to refuse on principle alone, but her eyes betrayed her, drifting to the stack of bills on her counter. Rent notice, car payment, credit card minimums. The math was brutal and unforgiving. "You're offering this because you feel guilty. I'm offering this because you defended me when you had every reason not to, and now you're suffering for it." Kang's expression softened. "And because I genuinely need someone competent who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. Your work at the estate has been impeccable. This isn't pity, Halley. It's recognition of value." She looked around her tiny apartment, at the life she'd built through sheer determination. Pride wanted her to refuse. Survival demanded she accept. "I'd have conditions," she heard herself say. "Name them." Halley didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat cross-legged on their bed with her laptop, falling down the rabbit hole of Lee Kang's digital footprint. The news articles painted a familiar picture: alleged connections to organized crime, suspected money laundering, rumors of controlling significant portions of LA's Koreatown. Anonymous sources claimed he ran everything from protection rackets to high-stakes gambling. The LAPD had investigated him dozens of times without ever making charges stick. But there were other stories too. A community center in Koreatown bearing his family's name, offering free after-school programs and ESL classes, scholarships for Korean-American students, small business loans that traditional banks wouldn't touch. An elderly woman quoted in a Korean-language newspaper, "Mr. Kang helped save my restaurant when no one else would." The man was a contradiction. criminal and benefactor, ruthless and protective, feared and respected. Perhaps that was the point. Perhaps in his world, those things weren't contradictions at all. Dawn brought clarity born not of certainty but of necessity. She would take the job, but on her terms. Her integrity wasn't for sale, even if her labor was. By 9 o'clock, Halley stood at the estate gates with a single suitcase containing everything that mattered. The security guard recognized her and opened the gates without question. Kang met her on the front steps, and something in his expression suggested he'd been waiting. "I have conditions," Halley said before he could speak. "I won't do anything illegal. I won't lie for you or to the police. I won't be complicit in anything that violates my conscience. And I keep my independence. This is employment, not ownership." She expected negotiation, perhaps resistance. Instead, Kang smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his usually composed features. "I wouldn't want you any other way," he said simply. "Your integrity is precisely why I want you here." The guest house sat behind the main residence, connected by a stone pathway lined with Japanese maples. Halley stepped inside and felt her breath catch. The space was larger than her entire apartment. Hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, a kitchen with gleaming appliances, a bedroom with an actual king-sized bed. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's appropriate for your position," Kang corrected. "My household manager should live comfortably." The staff meeting was predictably awkward. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, regarded Halley with obvious suspicion. The groundskeeper barely made eye contact. They'd all heard what happened with the police, and they were waiting to see if she was ally or threat, fool or friend. Halley understood. Trust was earned through action, not words. She spent the afternoon learning their routines, asking questions, taking notes. By evening, Mrs. Chen was showing her the preferred cleaning products unprompted, and the groundskeeper was explaining the irrigation system's quirks. Dinner was set for two in the main house's smaller dining room, an intimate space that felt more like a home than a mansion. Kang had changed into casual clothes, and without the armor of his suits, he looked younger, more approachable. They started with estate operations, staffing schedules, vendor contracts, upcoming maintenance. Halley took mental notes, already seeing inefficiencies she could streamline. But somewhere between the main course and coffee, the conversation shifted. "You never told me why you became a domestic worker," Kang said, genuine curiosity in his voice. Halley set down her fork. "Because I'm good at making invisible things visible, at creating order from chaos, and because honest work is honest work, regardless of what people think about it." "Your family?" "My mother cleaned houses in Atlanta, my grandmother before her. They taught me that there's dignity in any work done with excellence." She met his eyes. "Why do you ask?" "Because most people in your position would be ashamed. You wear it like armor." "It's not armor, it's truth." Halley leaned forward. "What about you? How does someone end up here?" Kang was quiet for a long moment. "Most people only see what I do. The power, the fear, the allegations. You saw who I am, someone being treated unjustly. That's a rare gift, Halley, to see the person beneath the reputation." Something unspoken hung in the air between them, charged and dangerous. Halley felt it like electricity on her skin, an awareness that this was more than employer and employee, that something had shifted in the space between defending him and accepting his offer. "I should go," Halley said abruptly. "Early start tomorrow." "Of course." Kang rose smoothly. "Thank you for coming, for staying." As Halley walked back to her guest house under the stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a threshold into something far more complicated than a job. The evening had ended with professional distance, but the lingering awareness suggested that distance wouldn't hold long. By the end of her first week, Halley had transformed the estate's operations. She'd reorganized the household schedules, negotiated better rates with vendors, and implemented systems that made everything run with quiet efficiency. Mrs. Chen now sought her opinion on menu planning. The groundskeeper asked her advice on landscaping decisions. She'd earned her place through competence, exactly as she'd intended. Late one night, carrying linens to the storage room, Halley noticed light spilling from beneath a door she'd assumed was locked. Curiosity pulled her forward. The door opened to reveal a private study that took her breath away, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, classical music playing softly from hidden speakers, and walls adorned with original art that belonged in museums. Kang sat in a leather chair by the window, reading by lamplight, still dressed despite the late hour. He looked up as she entered, and she saw exhaustion etched into his features. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not." He closed the book. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, she noticed. "Insomnia is an old companion. I've learned not to fight it." Halley found herself moving into the room rather than retreating. "How long have you been awake?" "Define awake." A wry smile touched his lips. "I sleep in increments. An hour here, 2 there. The weight of leadership doesn't respect circadian rhythms." "Sounds lonely." "It is." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. The loneliness of always calculating consequences, of knowing every decision affects lives you're responsible for. Most people don't understand that burden. Halley settled into the chair across from him, somehow knowing this conversation mattered. "Tell me about your life, the real story, not the rumors." Kang sat for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then he began. "I was 8 when my parents died. Car accident on the Pacific Coast Highway. My uncle took me in. He was already deep in the organization. I didn't choose this life, Halley. It chose me when I was too young to understand what it meant." His eyes grew distant. "But I did choose how to live it, with honor, with rules." "What rules?" "No drugs. Ever. I've seen what they do to communities, to families. No human trafficking. People aren't commodities. I protect the community, the small business owners who can't protect themselves from worse predators. And I punish anyone who preys on the weak." His voice hardened. "The law sees me as a criminal. My people see me as protection from worse criminals." The next day, he showed her. They drove to the community center in Koreatown, a beautiful building where children played basketball and elderly immigrants practiced English. A young woman approached them, speaking rapid Korean. Kang listened, then made a phone call. Within an hour, her family's restaurant had the loan that would save it from closure. "The banks wouldn't help her," Kang explained as they drove back. "Too risky," they said. "But I know her family. They're good people who deserve a chance." Halley's black and white worldview, the clear lines between right and wrong she'd always relied on, began to blur into complicated grays. That evening, as they walked the estate grounds, a man appeared from the shadows, lean, dangerous, a knife glinting in his hand. He lunged at Kang with a shout in Korean. What happened next took seconds but felt like slow motion. Kang moved with brutal efficiency, disarming the attacker and breaking his wrist with a sickening crack. The violence was shocking, ruthless, a reminder of exactly who Lee Kang was beneath the expensive suits. The attacker fled, and Kang immediately turned to Halley. "Are you hurt?" She looked down to see blood on her arm where the knife had grazed her. She hadn't even felt it. Kang's entire demeanor shifted. The ruthless fighter disappeared, replaced by something tender as he gently examined her wound. His fingers were careful, almost reverent as he cleaned the cut with supplies from his car. "It's just a scratch," Halley said, trying to reconcile the man who'd just broken someone's wrist with the one touching her so gently. "You could have been seriously hurt." His voice was rough with emotion. "Because you were standing next to me. I was standing exactly where I chose to be." Kang's eyes met hers, and something passed between them, an understanding that transcended words. "You keep surprising me, Halley Williams, every single day." "Good," she whispered, and neither of them moved away from the small space between them, the air charged with all the things they weren't yet saying. The raid came at dawn, battering rams against the estate gates, a dozen officers in tactical gear swarming the grounds like an invading army. Halley woke to shouting and the thunder of boots on pavement, her heart lurching into her throat as she threw on clothes and ran outside. Baldwin stood at the center of it all, warrant held high like a trophy, his smile vicious with triumph. Kang emerged from the main house already dressed, moving with that same controlled dignity he'd shown during the first confrontation. No resistance, no theatrics. He simply stood with hands visible as officers surrounded him, reading rights he probably had memorized. Lee Kang, you're under arrest for money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Halley watched them cuff him, feeling helpless fury burn through her veins. This was theater, performance designed to humiliate. The excessive force, the dawn timing, the spectacle of it all, this was Baldwin's revenge. Officers scattered across the property, tearing through the main house with gleeful destruction. When they reached her guest house, Halley tried to follow, but a young officer blocked her path. "Ma'am, you need to stay back." Through the windows as she watched them ransack her private space, drawers emptied, mattress flipped, her few possessions scattered like garbage. The violation made her skin crawl. Baldwin appeared at her elbow, his presence deliberately invasive. "Still want to defend him, Miss Williams? You have no right to destroy my home." "We have every right. Search warrant covers all structures on the property." He pulled out a manila folder, opening it with theatrical flourish. "Want to know what we found? Bank records showing large cash deposits to your account, wire transfers from offshore accounts. You've been money laundering for your boss, Halley. That makes you an accomplice." Her blood turned to ice. "That's a lie. I've never—" "Evidence doesn't lie." Baldwin's smile was predatory. "Here's how this works. You testify against Kang, tell us everything about his operations, his associates, his business dealings, and this all goes away. We'll call it cooperation, give you immunity. You walk away clean. And if I refuse, then you go down with him. Conspiracy charges, money laundering, 5 to 10 years minimum." He leaned closer. "Think carefully, Halley. Is defending a criminal really worth your freedom?" Before she could respond, a sleek black car pulled through the gates. A woman emerged in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Halley's car. Kang's attorney, moving with the confidence of someone who dismantled prosecutions before breakfast. The lawyer disappeared into the main house, and within 30 minutes the entire operation shifted. Officers received phone calls, exchanged worried glances. Baldwin's triumph curdled into barely contained rage. By noon, Kang was released. The evidence had been obtained through illegal means, the warrant based on testimony from a witness who'd recanted. The charges wouldn't stick. Not yet. But the message was brutally clear. Baldwin would destroy them both. Consequences be damned. Back at the estate, Kang's composure finally cracked. Halley found him in his study, fury radiating from him in waves as he stared out the window at the destroyed grounds. "You should leave," he said without turning. "Go somewhere safe. I'll provide everything you need. Money, new identity, a fresh start far from here." "I'm not running." "Kang, that's exactly what Baldwin wants." She moved to stand beside him, her anger matching his. "He wants me afraid, wants me isolated, wants me to abandon you so he can destroy you without witnesses. I won't give him that satisfaction." Kang turned to face her, and something in his expression shifted. For the first time, she saw him looking at her not as an employee he was responsible for, not as someone who needed protection, but as an equal, someone choosing to stand beside him despite understanding the cost. "You are extraordinary," Kang said softly, and the way he looked at her made her heart stutter. "I'm just someone who refuses to run." "No," he corrected, moving closer. "You're someone who sees clearly and chooses bravely. That's rare, Halley. That's everything." Baldwin's harassment became relentless. Halley spotted his unmarked car following her to the grocery store, parked across from the estate at odd hours. Neighbors reported officers asking questions about her character, her habits, her relationship with Kang. The psychological warfare was methodical and suffocating. When Kang assigned her personal security, a stoic man named Jin who shadowed her everywhere, Halley's frustration finally boiled over. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, confronting Kang in his study. "I can't live like this, with someone following me to get coffee, watching me every second. I won't be your prisoner." Kang's jaw tightened. "You're not my prisoner. You're someone I'm trying to keep alive." "By making me feel like I can't breathe?" Halley's voice rose. "By taking away every bit of freedom I have left?" "Freedom means nothing if you're dead." His control cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. "Baldwin is escalating. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous. Do you understand what that means?" "Then tell me." She moved closer, frustration and something deeper driving her forward. "Stop protecting me from information and just tell me the truth. Why do you care so much? Why does this matter to you beyond guilt or obligation?" The question hung between them, and Halley watched Kang's carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "Because you're the first person in 20 years who looked at me and saw someone worth defending." His voice dropped to something raw and honest. "Not what I could do for you, not what you could gain from knowing me. You saw injustice and you acted, without calculation, without agenda. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" He turned away, staring out the window. "In my world, every relationship is transaction, leverage, or liability. People stay close because they fear me or want to use me. Even family, even friends. There's always an angle, always a reason." He looked back at her. "Except you. You're the only person in 2 decades who's simply real." The confession cracked something open in Halley's chest. Her own walls, built through years of being overlooked and underestimated, began to fracture. "You want to know about real?" Her voice shook. "I've spent my entire adult life being invisible, moving through other people's homes like furniture they don't notice unless I'm not doing my job perfectly. I've served dinner parties where people discussed me like I wasn't standing right there. I've cleaned bedrooms while couples argued, held crying children while parents worked, managed entire households without anyone knowing my name." She felt tears threaten and pushed through. "I made myself small so I could survive, accepted invisibility as the price of employment. And then you," she met his eyes, "you made me visible, Lee. You saw me, not the maid, not the help, not the obstacle to your arrest. You saw me as a person worth knowing, worth protecting, worth everything." The space between them disappeared. Kang crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything people said about him. "Halley," he breathed, and she could see everything in his eyes. The loneliness that matched her own, the recognition of finding something unexpected and irreplaceable, the want that had been building between them since that first confrontation. She rose onto her toes as he lowered his head, their breath mingling in the charged air. His thumb traced her cheekbone with reverent care. Another second and their lips would meet, and everything would change irrevocably. The security alarm blared. They sprang apart as Jin burst through the door. "Sir, Baldwin is at the gates. He has a camera crew with him, claiming he's here to serve papers." Kang's expression shuddered instantly, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the armor of the crime boss. But his hand found Halley's, squeezed once, a promise that this wasn't over. "Keep her inside," he ordered Jin. "I'll handle Baldwin." "Lee!" Halley caught his arm. He turned back, and the heat in his gaze nearly undid her. "We're not finished, Halley. Not even close." As he strode out to face Baldwin, Halley pressed her fingers to her lips, still feeling the ghost of the kiss that hadn't happened. But the moment had shifted everything. The truth was spoken now, impossible to take back. They'd crossed a line neither of them could uncross, and Halley found she had no desire to try. Baldwin's media stunt backfired spectacularly. Within 48 hours, anonymous tips flooded internal affairs, documented evidence of Baldwin's harassment, falsified reports, and connections to an evidence-planting scandal from 3 years prior. His corruption was exposed with surgical precision, and suddenly, Baldwin found himself under investigation instead of leading one. Kang's strategic mind at work, Halley realized. He'd dismantled his enemy without ever raising his voice. But as they watched the news coverage together, Kang's expression remained grim. He won't stop. Men like Baldwin don't surrender. They just get more desperate. This isn't over. Then we deal with whatever comes next, Halley said simply. That evening, Kang asked her to dinner on the estate's terrace. Not the formal dining room, but an intimate table under string lights, overlooking gardens that glowed in the dusk. The setting felt deliberate, significant. They ate in companionable silence at first, but tension hummed beneath the quiet, everything unspoken since their interrupted moment 2 days ago. Finally, Kang set down his wineglass. This isn't about the job anymore. Halley's heart kicked against her ribs. No, it isn't. Kang, I want you to stay, not as my employee, as... He paused, and she saw vulnerability flash across his features. As what? She needed to hear him say it, needed him to define what this was becoming. Your partner? Your woman? What does that even mean in your world, Lee? I don't know. His honesty was devastating. I've never wanted to find out before. Every relationship in my life has been defined by my position, by what people wanted from me or feared about me. But with you, he leaned forward, intensity burning in his dark eyes. I want something undefined, something real. Real comes with complications you can't strategize away, Halley's voice wavered. The danger will always be there. Baldwin isn't the only enemy you have. And she gestured at herself, I'm a former maid from Atlanta who cleans houses for a living. Your world and mine, they don't make sense together. You deserve someone uncomplicated, Kang said quietly. Someone safe who can give you a normal life without constant threats and impossible moral compromises. Maybe I'm tired of safe. The words burst from Halley before she could reconsider. Maybe I spent so many years being invisible and small and unthreatening that I forgot what it feels like to want something dangerous and real and completely impossible. She stood, moving to the terrace railing, needing space to speak her truth. I've been fighting this, the attraction, the respect that's grown into something I can't name. I've told myself it's gratitude or proximity or just the intensity of the situation, but it's not. She turned to face him. It's you, Lee, the man who reads Marcus Aurelius at 2 a.m. and funds community centers and protects his people with everything he has. The man who touches me like I'm precious, even after breaking someone's wrist to protect us both. Kang crossed to her in 2 strides, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, the barely controlled emotion tightening his jaw. If you choose this, his voice was rough, I'll protect you with everything I have. Every resource, every connection, I don't need protection, Halley interrupted, placing her hand against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. I need partnership, equality, someone who sees me as capable of standing beside them, not behind them. Something shifted in his expression, relief mixed with admiration. Partners then, equals. He covered her hand with his. Your judgment matters as much as mine. Your safety is as important as my operations. We decide together. Together, Halley agreed, and the word felt like a vow. Lee's hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with that same reverent gentleness that undid her. Last chance to run, Halley Williams. I'm done running. The kiss, when it finally came, felt like both ending and beginning. His lips met hers with controlled intensity, and Halley melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss deepened, and she tasted want and promise and the acknowledgement of everything they were choosing despite the impossible odds. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lee rested his forehead against hers. No going back now, he murmured. Good. I never wanted to. Morning light streamed through unfamiliar windows as Halley woke in the main residence for the first time. Not in a guest house, not in staff quarters, but in Lee's private wing, a statement that would ripple through the entire household. She dressed carefully, aware that today would set the tone for everything that followed. Not as a maid, not as an employee, as Lee Kang's acknowledged partner, which meant navigating a world with no roadmap and earning respect she could no longer take for granted. The staff's reaction at breakfast was immediate, shock rippling through the room as she entered with Lee, his hand resting naturally at the small of her back. Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. The groundskeeper stopped mid-pour of his coffee. "I know this is unexpected," Halley said, meeting each person's gaze directly, "but nothing about my standards or expectations has changed. I'm still here to ensure this household runs with excellence. The only difference is where I sleep." Mrs. Chen recovered first, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Then I suppose we should prepare the master suite properly. Mr. Kang has terrible taste in throw pillows." The tension broke with soft laughter, and Halley felt acceptance settle over the room. They would watch, judge, and ultimately respect her based on her actions, exactly as it should be. Over the following days, she proved herself again, not through submission or accommodation, but through competence and strength. She managed the staff with firm kindness, negotiated with vendors from a position of authority, and sat beside Lee during meetings with his business associates, silent but present, her judgment valued. Then Baldwin made his final, desperate play. The call came from her mother in Atlanta, voice shaking with fear. Police had shown up asking questions, mentioning investigations, implying Halley was in serious legal trouble. Her younger brother had been pulled over 3 times in 1 week. The message was clear. Baldwin would hurt her family to hurt her. The old Halley would have panicked, would have felt helpless against institutional power wielded without conscience. But she'd been transformed by fire, and she no longer faced threats alone. "We need to protect them," Halley told Lee, her voice steady despite the fury burning in her chest. "Now." Within hours, her family had round-the-clock private security. Lee's lawyers filed harassment complaints and restraining orders, but Halley wanted more than defense. She wanted to end this. She'd been collecting evidence for weeks, every encounter with Baldwin, every threat, every violation of procedure, recorded, documented, cataloged with meticulous care. Now she added the final piece, a recording of Baldwin admitting he'd fabricate evidence to destroy anyone who defended criminals like Kang. She delivered it to Internal Affairs herself, walking into the precinct with her head high and Lee's lawyer at her side. When Baldwin was arrested 2 days later, corruption, evidence tampering, abuse of power, Halley watched the news footage with grim satisfaction. "You wanted to make me a criminal?" she whispered to the screen. "Instead, you taught me how to fight like one." That evening, she found Lee on the terrace at sunset, the same spot where they'd first kissed. He turned as she approached, pulling her into his arms with easy affection that still made her heart stutter. "Do you regret it, defending me that day?" he asked quietly. Halley considered the question seriously, thinking of everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained. "Only that it took me so long to see what I really wanted." "Which is?" She turned in his arms to face him fully, the setting sun painting them both in gold. "A life that's mine. Power I choose instead of power that chooses me. Love I claim rather than love that finds me convenient." She reached up to touch his face. "You, Lee. I wanted you and everything that comes with choosing you." His expression softened with an emotion so profound it took her breath away. "Then take it all, Halley. It's yours. I'm yours." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, the city spreading out beneath them in a carpet of lights. Halley Williams, no longer invisible, no longer powerless, stood beside a dangerous man who saw her as his equal. She'd defended a mafia boss and found herself in the process, discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed, and claimed a life she'd never imagined wanting. Some would call it foolish, this choice to love a man the world called criminal, to enter a world of shadows and complications and constant danger. But as Lee's arms tightened around her and she looked out over the life they'd built together, Halley knew the truth. She didn't call it foolish. She called it freedom.